July 13th, 2026. On the night of July 12th, U.S. Central Command execute IRGC dust, the fourth consecutive wave of strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And before that night was over, it did something that no American military operation in the history of the United States has ever done. It launched one-way attack sea drones in combat, autonomous, expendable, packed with explosives, traveling at over 40 miles per hour across the surface of the Persian Gulf, or potentially beneath it, guided by artificial intelligence that makes its own targeting decisions without a human being in the loop, straight into the IRGC's Mosquito fleet, straight into the port facilities where Iran thought the dense concentration of its own naval assets provided protection that the environment itself would deliver. No, enter the sea drones. This is the moment that military analysts who study autonomous systems have been expecting for years, and the moment that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy never adequately prepared for. Because nothing in the IRGC's threat library, nothing in the doctrine it has developed over decades of straight harassment operations, I was built to defend against a swarm of autonomous kamikaze surface vessels appearing from the water at 40+ miles per hour with no human operator to deter, no cockpit to threaten, no crew to take prisoner, and no hesitation built into anything they do. The fourth wave changed the nature of this conflict. And the most important thing about it is not the number of targets struck. It is what was used to strike them. But let us back all the way up, because to understand why the fourth wave happened when it did, and why it deployed a weapon system that has never before appeared in American combat, you need to understand what the Islamic Republic chose to do with the diplomatic off-ramp that it was given, and how the specific form of its rejection of that off-ramp made the fourth wave not just militarily justified, but operationally inevitable. The Memorandum of Understanding, brokered by Pakistan and Qatar and signed at Versailles on June 11th, gave Iran something that its military position had not earned: time, an off-ramp. A diplomatic mechanism through which Tehran could have claimed that international pressure had produced a result, preserved some version of operational control narrative around the strait, and avoided the continued destruction of its military infrastructure, while something resembling a settlement was constructed. The agreement was vague enough on the strait dimension that both sides could have claimed something from it. Iran could have pointed to provisions about ship routing as evidence that its position on strait management had received international recognition. The United States could have pointed to the cessation of IRGC attacks on commercial shipping as evidence that the campaign had produced behavioral change. Both sides had the raw material for a face-saving interpretation of the text. Iran's parliament speaker Ghalibaf appeared briefly to be moving toward acceptance of that interpretation. And then he walked it back. And the reason he walked it back, the specific reasoning the Iranian side offered for why the MOU did not actually require them to stop attacking commercial vessels, is the sentence that explains everything that happened on the night of July 12th. Iran's definition of the phrase ensuring safe passage for commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, according to the position Ghalibaf ultimately articulated, was this: ships that coordinate with Iran before transiting and use Iranian-designated routes will be escorted. Ships that do not comply will be engaged. And the word engaged in the IRGC's operational vocabulary means launching Shahed kamikaze drones into the bridge and engine room of a civilian cargo vessel, killing the mariners aboard, sending burning ships to the bottom of the strait while claiming that this constitutes their version of maritime safety management. Read that again. Because what the Iranian side described as ship escort operations is the targeted killing of civilian mariners who had the audacity to use an international waterway without paying the IRGC's toll. That interpretation, presented with apparent sincerity as Iran's good faith understanding of what the MOU required, is not a negotiating position. It is a description of piracy with additional theological justification layered on top. And it is the specific reasoning that produced Trump's response, which was not a nuanced diplomatic counterproposal. It was 4 consecutive nights of strikes, the deployment of a weapon system that has never before appeared in combat, and a public declaration that the United States is taking over the strait. Trump's statement on July 13th is worth examining in full because it is not hyperbole dressed as policy. It is policy. Asked about Iran's claims to have closed the Strait of Hormuz, Trump said, "We're taking over the strait." They have nothing. They've got nothing. He then added that the United States would become what he called the guardian angel of the strait, and that the United States would be reimbursed for providing that guardianship. He said the U.S. had been guarding the strait for nothing, and now they were going to guard it and get paid. That statement is the most direct assertion of American operational control over an international waterway since the Second World War's Pacific Campaign. It is not a metaphor. It is not a rhetorical flourish. It is a description of the operational posture that CENTCOM's fourth wave, with its Sea drones, its Lucas aerial drones, its F-35-led strike packages, Its Wild Weasel harm shooters, its Super Hornets off the Abraham Lincoln, is being used to establish. The United States military is not conducting a punitive operation against Iran that ends when behavior changes. It is taking a strategic position in one of the most economically critical waterways on Earth, and it intends to hold that position. Now let us establish where the Fourth Wave's operational picture stands in the confirmed numbers and specific systems that give the analysis its factual foundation. CENTCOM has now executed 4 consecutive waves of strikes against Iranian military targets. The cumulative target count across all 4 waves now exceeds 300 confirmed Iranian military targets, struck, documented, and confirmed. 300 targets in the span of approximately 1 week. Coastal radar installations, fast attack boat berths, naval command positions, air defense networks, communications infrastructure, IRGC headquarters, nuclear facilities, conventional military bases, port infrastructure. The entire physical edifice of Iranian military capability along the southern coastline and now reaching deep into the interior has been systematically engaged. And for the first time in that campaign, the Fourth Wave added a category of weapon that no American military operation has ever used before. The Lucas drone, low-cost unmanned combat attack system, is the aerial component of the autonomous warfare package that appeared in the Fourth Wave. It is built by Arizona-based Spectre Works at a unit cost of approximately $35,000. For context, a single IRGC fast attack patrol boat, depending on its class and configuration, costs multiple millions of dollars. The Lucas costs $35,000. The exchange rate of that attrition is the operational logic of the entire autonomous systems investment that the American defense establishment has been making for years. You do not need to outspend the adversary on platform cost when your platform costs $35,000 and its platform costs millions. You need your platform to be accurate enough to kill the expensive one. The Lucas is accurate enough. The scale implications of that cost structure are enormous and deserve to be stated plainly. For the price of a single IRGC fast attack boat, you can field dozens of Lucas drones. For the price of a single Iranian ballistic missile, which the IRGC has been consuming at significant rate in its attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and Jordan, you can field multiple Lucas units that can be assigned to different targets simultaneously. The IRGC's military procurement budget, already under severe pressure from the oil revenue freeze and the personal sanctions on the Khamenei financial network, is consuming expensive inventory and replacing it with nothing, while the autonomous systems being used against it can be produced at industrial scale for a fraction of the cost of what they are destroying. This is not just a military technology gap. It is a manufacturing economics gap that the IRGC cannot close in any relevant time frame. But what makes the Lucas specifically interesting in this context is not its price point. It is its origin story. The Lucas drone is reverse engineered from Iran's own Shahed-136, the same Delta-wing kamikaze aerial drone that the IRGC has been launching at civilian apartment buildings in Bahrain and Kuwait, that Russia has been using to strike Ukrainian cities for years, and that has become the signature weapon of the Iranian proxy war doctrine deployed across every theater from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. The Shahed-136 is the IRGC's most proliferated offensive weapon. The Lucas is that weapon, same Delta-wing profile, same basic aerodynamic architecture, rebuilt with American manufacturing standards, American AI guidance, American explosive payloads, and American military communication protocols. It is the IRGC's own weapon turned against them, carrying roughly 18 kilograms of explosive directly into the military positions that the Shahed was supposed to protect. The operational symbolism of using a reverse-engineered version of Iran's own drone to destroy Iran's military infrastructure is not accidental. CENTCOM said it out loud when the Lucas first flew in February. These low-cost drones modeled after Iran's Shahed drones are now delivering American-made retribution. That statement was specific, deliberate, and designed to be understood in Tehran. The Lucas launches from combat ships, including the USS Santa Barbara, and flies autonomously to its target. There is no human in the loop on the individual targeting decision. The targeting parameters are set before launch, but the execution of the strike itself, the final guidance, the terminal approach, the detonation, is handled by the drone's autonomous systems without real-time human authorization for each individual engagement. This is the threshold that has been debated in defense policy circles for years. The autonomous weapon system that makes its own lethal decisions without continuous human authorization. The Lucas has crossed that threshold in live combat in the Persian Gulf on the night of July 12, 2026. Whatever the academic and policy debate around autonomous lethal systems has been, the operational reality is now established. American autonomous weapons are making autonomous lethal targeting decisions in the Strait of Hormuz. The InterShield AI system layered on top of the Lucas represents the next order of complexity above individual drone autonomy. InterShield is described as a hive mind AI architecture that allows individual Lucas drones, other aerial platforms, and manned fighter aircraft to share targeting information, coordinate their engagement sequences, and deconflict their approaches to a target area in real time. In practical terms, this means an F-35 conducting a reconnaissance pass over an IRGC port facility can share the targeting picture it develops with a swarm of Lucas drones executing strikes on that same facility, while the F-16CJ Wild Weasels, suppressing the air defense networks, are feeding their suppression status back into the same shared operational picture. And all of this connects through the Aegis combat system on the destroyers and cruisers in the task force, creating a single integrated picture across every platform in the engagement zone. The traditional air tasking order, the document that human planners use to manually sequence and deconflict strike packages in conventional military operations, is not fast enough to manage the tempo at which an AI-coordinated autonomous swarm operates. InterShield replaces the air tasking order's deconfliction function with real-time machine decision-making that operates at processor speeds rather than human planning speeds. What CENTCOM executed on the night of July 12th was not a coordinated strike package in the traditional sense where human operators manage the deconfliction and sequencing manually. It was a multi-domain autonomous system making real-time coordination decisions across the full spectrum of platforms in the theater. And the Iranian air defense operators who survived 3 previous nights of Wild Weasel suppression were attempting to track and respond to something that operates at a speed and coordination density that their doctrine was not designed to counter. This is what the IRGC's radar operators were trying to track on July 12th. Not just aircraft, not just missiles. A coordinated autonomous swarm that was simultaneously above them, on the water surface around them, and potentially beneath the surface, all sharing a common picture, all sequencing their attacks based on AI-generated priority assessments, all operating at speeds and coordination densities that no human control loop could replicate. Iran's surviving air defense infrastructure, degraded by 3 previous nights of Wild Weasel suppression, was not designed to defend against this. Nothing in the Iranian military's threat library was designed to defend against this, because nothing like it has existed in American combat before July 12, 2026. Now let us address the sea drone dimension specifically, because this is the part of the 4th wave that represents the most historically significant operational development, the first ever use of one-way attack surface drones in American military combat. The operational concept is not new. Ukraine has been using exactly this system against Russia's Black Sea fleet for over a year, sinking ships that the Russian Navy had no effective countermeasure against, demonstrating that a small, fast, autonomous surface vessel packed with explosives and guided to its target by GPS and AI is one of the most cost-effective anti-ship weapons ever deployed. The Russian Navy learned a lesson about the vulnerability of surface ships to autonomous surface drone attack that transformed its Black Sea operational posture. The IRGC is now learning the same lesson with the same category of system, adapted for the specific geography of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Task Force 59 is the operational unit that has been developing and deploying unmanned maritime systems in the Persian Gulf since its establishment, and the Strait of Hormuz is its backyard. The task force has been operating unmanned surface vessels in the region for surveillance, intelligence collection, and mine countermeasure operations for months. The commanders, the operators, and the supporting infrastructure of Task Force 59 know the Strait's geography in detail, every channel, every depth contour, every pattern of IRGC patrol boat operations, every port entrance where Iranian naval assets shelter. When the decision was made to adapt the unmanned surface vessel capability from surveillance and mine operations to one-way attack operations, Task Force 59 already had the situational awareness of the target environment that made precise autonomous navigation to specific port facilities possible. The July 12th sea drone strikes did not require months of new intelligence development. They used the intelligence picture that Task Force 59 had been developing continuously since its establishment. The platform most likely employed include fleet-class unmanned surface vessels from the stable of manufacturers that have been competing for Pentagon contracts in this space. Saronic Technologies' Corsair unmanned surface vehicle is already confirmed to be operating in the Strait under Task Force 59, the Navy's Unmanned Systems Task Force established specifically to develop autonomous maritime capability in the Gulf. The Corsair was originally designed for mine countermeasure operations, which means it is built to operate in exactly the threat environment of the Strait of Hormuz, navigating around potential mines while executing its primary mission. Adapted for one-way attack, the Corsair-class vessel traveling at over 40 miles per hour becomes something that the IRGC's fast attack boat crews have no practiced doctrine to counter. The fast attack boat's entire tactical identity is built around being the most agile, most aggressive, most fearless small vessel in the water. Against an autonomous drone vessel traveling at its top speed with no crew to protect and no operator to deter, that identity provides no advantage. You cannot threaten a machine. You cannot intimidate its operators into breaking off the approach. You cannot fire warning shots and expect deceleration. The autonomous surface drone does not receive warnings. It receives target coordinates, and it executes. The other manufacturers in the evaluated pool MARTAC, Blue Ops, Sierra Nevada, U-Force, and others whose specifics remain classified, represent the full spectrum of the American autonomous maritime industry's capability that has been developed over years of investment specifically in anticipation of a conflict environment exactly like the one now unfolding in the Persian Gulf. The fourth wave on July 12th was the operational validation of that investment. It was the live combat proof of concept for every program, every budget argument, every classified evaluation that has taken place in the preceding years. The fact that CENTCOM has not publicly named the specific manufacturer of the sea drones it deployed is itself a signal. The capability is significant enough, and the specific platform potentially sensitive enough, that the operational security value of not confirming exactly which system was used outweighs the public affairs value of claiming credit. Whatever was in the water on July 12th, the decision to keep its origin classified suggests it is not the system that has been publicly discussed. It may be something more advanced. The underwater dimension, potentially including the Lamprey autonomous underwater vehicle, adds a layer that is even harder for the IRGC to counter than the surface drone threat. A surface drone can at least be visually identified if you have the crew and the attention to look for it. An underwater autonomous vehicle traveling beneath the surface of the strait, beneath the keels of IRGC patrol craft, beneath the infrastructure of port facilities built into the coastline, is invisible until the moment of detonation. Iran's naval facilities along the coast were built with a specific threat model in mind: aerial attack from above and surface attack from the sea. They were not built with the assumption that autonomous weapons could approach unseen from below and detonate against the most protected parts of their infrastructure. If underwater autonomous systems were part of the July 12th package, and the intelligence community's silence on the manufacturer of the sea drones used suggests that the capability being protected is potentially the most sensitive version of what was deployed, then the IRGC's port security model has been invalidated from a direction it had no effective defense against. The caves along the Iranian coastline where the IRGC has built sheltered berths for its fast attack boats, the port infrastructure where submarines and patrol craft have been concealed beneath protective overhead cover, none of that overhead protection means anything to a system approaching from underwater. Now let us address the three simultaneous pressure tracks operating through the fourth wave, because the sea drone deployment changes the character of each track in specific ways. The military track has now crossed the autonomous systems threshold in a way that is not reversible. The Lucas drone and the autonomous surface vessel have been validated in live combat. They work. They hit targets. They are cheap enough to deploy in quantities that overwhelm any point defense system the IRGC possesses. The precedent established on July 12th means that every future strike package can include autonomous surface and aerial systems as a baseline component, not a novel addition. The IRGC cannot adapt its defense to a threat it has not seen before, and it has now seen it in a context where the adaptation time is measured in hours rather than months, because the fourth wave is not the last wave. A U.S. official confirmed that a bigger wave of American attacks was expected against the Islamic regime's military targets for the remainder of the current operational period. The autonomous systems will be in the next package and the next one. The IRGC's fast attack boat fleet, its coastal patrol craft, its port infrastructure, everything that sits at the waterline or below it, is now vulnerable to a threat it has no effective countermeasure against. The economic and strategic track has been transformed by Trump's Strait Declaration. Saying we're taking over the Strait is not a policy statement about future intentions. It is a description of the operational reality being created by 4 consecutive nights of strikes, plus the deployment of autonomous maritime systems in the Strait itself. Task Force 59 is already operating unmanned surface vessels in the waterway. American naval forces have facilitated the transit of over 800 commercial vessels and 380 million barrels of crude oil through the Strait since the beginning of May. The IRGC's claim that the Strait is Iranian territory is being disproved operationally on a continuous basis, and the fourth wave reinforced that disproof with autonomous weapons that now patrol the Strait on their own. If Trump's statement about being reimbursed for Strait guardianship is operationalized, if the United States establishes a formal mechanism through which commercial shipping pays for American naval protection of Strait transit, then the IRGC's decades-long project of monetizing Strait harassment through implied threat has been replaced by an American-managed system that serves the same economic function for a completely different set of beneficiaries. The psychological track reached a specific inflection point with the Lucas drone specifically. The IRGC's most proliferated weapon, the Shahed-136 that it has deployed against civilians across multiple theaters for years, is now being used against it in reverse-engineered form. This is not just a technical capability, it is a message. Every IRGC commander who watches Lucas footage and recognizes the delta wing planform of the Shahed in the weapon being used to destroy his facilities is receiving information about the current strategic relationship that no diplomatic statement, no press conference, and no telegram message from an invisible supreme leader can reframe. Your weapon is now our weapon. Your technique is now our technique. And we build it better at a third of the cost of one of your patrol boats, and we have more of them than you have targets to protect. Now let us go inside the IRGC Naval Command structure as it exists after July 12th, because the human beings running Iran's maritime operations in the Strait are making decisions tonight in a threat environment that did not exist when this conflict began. The IRGC Navy's operational doctrine in the Strait has been built around the concept of the mosquito fleet. Massive numerical superiority in small, fast, hard-to-hit vessels that can swarm larger American ships, creating simultaneous threats from multiple directions, and generate a threat environment that overwhelms the point defense systems of even the most capable warships. The doctrine was designed specifically to neutralize American naval superiority by converting the Strait's geography into an equalizer. Shallow water, constrained maneuvering room, proximity to the Iranian coastline, all of which favor small, fast vessels over large, advanced ones. The Iranian military spent years and significant resources building and fielding hundreds of fast attack craft specifically for this environment. The doctrine was called asymmetric maritime warfare, and it was presented, including in Iranian military publications, as the answer to American naval dominance. The autonomous sea drone is the counter to the mosquito fleet that the mosquito fleet doctrine never anticipated. When the equalizer is a swarm of autonomous expendable vessels traveling at 40+ miles per hour with AI targeting and no crew to protect, the advantages that made the mosquito fleet doctrine compelling, speed, numbers, disregard for risk, belong to the autonomous attacker rather than the IRGC defender. The IRGC designed a doctrine around being willing to accept casualties that the other side would not accept. The autonomous drone accepts no casualties because it has no crew. The IRGC built a doctrine around numerical swarms that would overwhelm point defenses. The autonomous drone swarm is a numerical weapon that doesn't require feeding, housing, paying, or maintaining morale. The IRGC mosquito fleet was designed as the equalizer. The American autonomous sea drone is the equalizer's equalizer. And the fast attack boat commanders who watched the fourth wave happen are calculating, in whatever port facilities they still have access to tonight, that the doctrine they have spent careers building and training for is no longer viable. The honest strategic assessment of what July 12, 2026 represents is this: American military technology crossed an operational threshold that changes the character of maritime warfare in the Persian Gulf and potentially in every contested waterway on Earth. The deployment of combat-validated autonomous surface drones in a live combat environment, combined with the AI coordination system that allows them to work with manned aircraft and naval platforms as a unified strike architecture, is the kind of military development that textbooks are written around. It happened in the Strait of Hormuz on the night of July 12th because the IRGC's mosquito fleet was there and the autonomous systems were ready, and the political decision to use them had been made. The geopolitical implications of Trump's Guardian of the Strait declaration sit on top of the military capability now being exercised there in a way that is analytically inseparable. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a choke point for Iranian oil exports. It is the passage through which approximately 20% of the world's daily oil supply moves. 20%. Every barrel of oil that travels by sea from the Gulf states to Asia, to Europe, to the United States, to every consumer market in the connected global economy, a significant share of it passes through a waterway that, as of this morning, the President of the United States has publicly declared American forces are taking over and will be guarding for compensation. The global oil market, every energy company with exposure to Gulf supply chains, every national government whose energy security depends on uninterrupted Strait transit, all of them are recalculating their operating assumptions based on Trump's statement and the fourth wave that produced it. If American forces are the guardians of the Strait, then American strategic priorities become the governing logic of the Strait's operation. That is, a geopolitical transformation of the Persian Gulf's role in global energy supply that the 20-year period of IRGC Strait dominance created in its image. The image is now being replaced. The most difficult analytical question that sits at the center of this moment is what a demonstrated autonomous weapons capability in live combat means for the psychological dimension of the conflict with Iran. The IRGC's entire strategic framework is built on a concept of sacrifice, the willingness to absorb casualties, to send human beings into danger, to sustain losses that the adversary is not willing to match, as the foundation of military deterrence and operational effectiveness. Iran's revolutionary military ideology explicitly valorizes martyrdom. The prospect of human casualties on the IRGC's side has never been the deterrent to American military action that the IRGC hoped it would be, but it has functioned as a cost that shaped the political environment around American decisions. Autonomous systems remove that cost calculation from the American side of the ledger entirely. When the weapons being used to destroy IRGC fast attack boats have no crew, the IRGC's threat to impose casualties on the people operating those weapons is empty. There is no crew to threaten. There is no operator to intimidate. There are no American families to mourn. There is only the autonomous system, the target, and the outcome. The structural risk embedded in this development is the autonomous system's threshold itself. The fact that lethal targeting decisions were being made by AI systems without continuous human authorization in a live combat environment for the first time in American military history. The policy debate about autonomous lethal systems has been resolved not by a policy decision made in Washington, but by an operational deployment made in the Persian Gulf. And the implications of that resolution extend beyond Iran and beyond this conflict. Every adversary military that has been watching the development of American autonomous systems for years now has confirmation that the systems work, that they have been deployed in combat, and that the threshold for their use in American military operations has been crossed. China's military planners studying the Taiwan Strait are processing the July 12th data. Russia's naval commanders assessing their own fleet vulnerabilities in confined waterways are processing the July 12th data. The Lucas drone and the autonomous surface vessel are now part of the operational inventory that any adversary must account for in its planning assumptions. The genie is out of the bottle. It crossed the threshold on July the 12th in the Persian Gulf, and it is not going back. On the night of July 12th, autonomous drones entered the harbors where the IRGC had positioned the fast attack boats it believed were protected by port geography, by the density of civilian infrastructure, by the difficulty of aerial targeting in congested port environments. Those drones did not need a human operator to thread through the approach to those harbors. They did not need a pilot willing to fly into a congested threat environment. They did not need a crew to survive the mission. They needed a target, a route, and a payload. They had all three. And they arrived at speeds and from directions and in forms that the IRGC's surviving defense infrastructure had no catalog entry for and no rehearsed counter to. Iran thought the ports were hiding something. The sea drones demonstrated that the ports were not hiding anything from a system that approaches from 40 miles per hour on the surface, or from below the surface in silence, guided by artificial intelligence that has already made the decision before the first sensor on the Iranian side detects the approach. The IRGC's Mosquito fleet brought the fight to the water. The United States brought a bug zapper, autonomous, expendable, costing $35,000 per unit, never before used in American combat. The next wave will include more of them. The wave after that will include more still. And the IRGC naval commanders who are still alive after the fourth wave are calculating tonight that the doctrine they spent careers building has been invalidated by a system that was designed specifically to invalidate it, and that there is nothing in their inventory, their training, or their established tactical playbook that gives them an answer to what just showed up in their harbors.